Good morning.
Happy Monday.
Hey,
Do we know Joe is going to be able to make the meeting today?
no, he won't be able to join.
Yeah.
He's back in China.
Okay. Yeah, just thinking through some of the concerns raised on that one, on the I and J. They're both doing a similar thing, and I don't know if there's going to be an easy way to resolve that from that specific structure.
With I, at least for me, there is some controversial solution to me that using empty image manifest that references a config that has a compatibility field. Uh, for me, it's better to introduce a new media type. However, as you said, we have a problem with this descriptor that has to be handled by the registries or client tooling.
So maybe I missed it because I'm just kind of looking through here to figure out. I got the impression that the media type was the big difference between I and J, but it sounds like there's more in there, and I'm just kind of slowly digging into this.
I will share my screen in a second. It's 5 minutes after, so we can already start this topic. Screen 2.
Is it that he put the artifact inside of the config blob?
But by
And
artifact, you mean to put just a JSON, right? Because,
whatever the compatibility artifact was.
yeah, so if we are talking about only the JSON specification, yeah. Because Derek's idea last time was to extend the image config, which is a part of it, which is referenced by image manifest, right? So each time you update the config with compatibility, you change the digest of the config, you change the manifest digest, and you cannot anymore reference. You have each time you have to build a new image, you lose some kind of flexibility in here. So
That's
Joe,
if that's if you put it in the somewhere under the image manifest itself. And
yeah,
so if it's in the index, you're still rebuilding the index, but
yeah,
potentially the individual images would be the same in that scenario.
exactly. So the index is the best place to put this. That's why there is this idea of compatibility descriptor on the index level. So first idea of Joe, the idea was to not to introduce a new media type, it just to have on the list of manifest, you have one additional image manifest. So in the index, you would have, maybe I will show you this a little bit different. I hope you can see my screen right now.
We can.
So here is the digest, right? The reference to image manifest. He would like to create something like that, that you have, that was under platform, sorry. That you have here compatibility, whatever is that the field. And here you have another digest, which is a reference to another image manifest, right? So let's call it some whatever. So the second image manifest. Okay. And here you have a reference to the first image manifest. Just to keep this chain that you have config that contains only compatibility. But that's why my comment were there that this breaks the existing manifest relations, that media type relations, because instead of having one image manifest in the index, you create another image manifest which is basically empty, which references the config that has only compatibility metadata. So each time you change the config digest, you change again the image manifest digest, which is empty, and yeah, that's how he thought it could work.
It's kind of along the way we do artifacts today, though, which that you wrap them inside of an image manifest. Just that's the manifest structure we have to push an artifact.
So you're thinking if we go that way, it could work. If you were just referencing creating a new empty image manifest just to have some reference to config that can contain only compatibility metadata, because
I think that's everything it's talking about doing refers. That's what you're doing with refers today. You're going to push an image manifest that has a subject, and it's going to more than likely be a blob, a layer blob rather than the config. Either way, that's more knit in there than anything else. But there's going to be a image manifest push that'll wrap your artifact.
okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't see this as much different in terms of trying to get around the problems that we originally identified, but it's like a hacky different solution, and I'm not sure how maintainers are going to receive it. Can we so can we step back for a second, because we have two proposals. We have two like flavors of proposals. The first one is adding metadata directly to a manifest, and that's probably what the runtime tools are going to use. The second one is our artifact. In the past couple of weeks, we've been making new proposals, jumping through hoops, trying to make some sort of registry interaction that supports the artifact. But why are we doing that? I am not, so if we're trying to convince the image maintainer, the runtime maintainers, that adding an artifact and an interaction with the registry is a good idea, I don't think we're going to do that, because I'm not even proven to myself that having this external artifact is useful. Like I feel like we're asking for too much and we're going to get nothing, because what we're asking for isn't, we're trying really hard to make them happy in terms of taking our original ideas and morphing them and making them really weird, and it's too much. I mean, maybe this is just my bias, but like I don't think this is something that we should be proposing right now.
So I have some answer to that. First of all, I don't think this is hacky. Uh, maybe this diagram here for me is a little hacky, but this makes perfect sense to me if we introduce a new media type for compatibility. Uh, let's just forget about that registries or client tool doesn't support that yet. Uh, but the biggest concerns of maintainers, not only runtimes, is that we introduce a new image spec, not image spec, but compatibility specification, which is outside of already existing specific specs that are today, right? So I can understand that, but putting all of this together over the compatibility descriptor, either over wrapping this around manifest or adding this as a new media type that way, I don't think it's hacky. It's just you're making compatibility part of the image spec. And I think this is the biggest concern right now.
But we're arguing to make compatibility this core part of these very kind of proven, tested standards that many started like implemented in, like, for example, Docker before they became standards. And we haven't done any job to prove that that information is actually useful. We're kind of putting the cart before the horse. If I were doing this, I would create the, so one thing we are confident about is that we think we want to test this idea of an artifact to inform compatibility. So I think what makes sense is to start with just the structure of the artifact and have that be, have that be a standard structure, prove that's useful, and then figure out where it belongs. Because we haven't proven it's useful yet. And I think trying to insert this compatibility artifact in this ecosystem when there's no evidence that it's a good idea, it's not logical to me.
Well, so basically the idea then of gathering all the stakeholders was wrong in the first place, and trying to make a standard in here under OCI. That I would say what you're saying to me right now sounds like this working group was completely useless.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about the artifact. I think the first part of putting like a very small amount of compatibility metadata, that may be our main contribution because that's actually going to inform the runtime. The second part, the artifact, creating the structure is also important because we'll work with something that's common. But we need like a round two after we've proven that structure is useful and the metadata is useful, because we still haven't had any of the conversation about what that metadata is and the labels. And I feel like that conversation has to come first, proving that it's useful in the cases that we've talked about scheduling. So when we go back for like some round two with all these maintainers, we can say, here are the experiments that we've done that have shown that this set of labels in this specific context improve it in this exact way. And we're asking them right now to just, to trust us that they will. And I mean, we could say that, but I would like to see proof. I would, if I was evaluating this as something to add into this very kind of hard set of standards, I would want to see that proof.
Yeah, that
Scale it up a little bit to give a slightly different perspective, but I think I align pretty closely with what Vanessa's saying. I was chatting with some doctor people last week about some of the challenges we're looking at, things we'd like to solve. And the common example comes up of making specific images for a GPU. And, this is the one for the NVIDIA driver, this is the one for an AMD driver. And maybe you have an image doesn't serve either. And the question came out, well, what if there's already a container running on the machine that's using the graphics card right now? Do you pick the image for the graphics card even though it's not currently available? What if they have multiple graphics cards, different kinds of graphics cards simultaneously installed on the machine? So even that simple case that we think is going to be relatively easy to get through the spec, there's a lot of road between where we are today and where we need to get to.
Yeah, those are reasonable arguments. I mean,
yeah, and I don't think I mean to say that like we won't get there. I do think we will, but I don't think that we're ready to put not the whole thing, just the second half with the artifact and how it fits into a registry. I don't think we're ready to package that up in a shiny package and say like this is an idea that is going to work. I think we need more work, and it's not an answer that's fulfilling to hear because you want it to go in and you want to get this work done and you want to get your, I don't know if your contract's approved or whatever if you're working on this, but like it probably will take some time, to figure these details out.
No worries. My contract doesn't matter here. First of all, it's just a matter of the community. Community is not a
I didn't
private
actually know you had a
folder.
contract.
But I have specific work.
I think you're going to find that iterating on an implementation is going to be a lot easier and quicker outside of OCI. And then once you have something that's working and visible and provable, then there's going to be the effort of, okay, how do we move this into OCI? And
it's like core Kubernetes versus like a Kubernetes SIG. Like I could give examples, but I totally agree with you, Brandon.
Yeah, I understand the idea, but how would you like to proceed with that? So would we continue with, for example, this compatibility working group, or we go outside completely, we drop the meetings? I mean,
I would say the presentation will be like, here is the metadata we want to add to the, the image manifest directly. This is the core of the contribution we think can be useful sooner than later. And then we also just want to design the structure of this artifact. And it has, and we have like more than 8, I don't know, we have a ton of proposals that are basically different derivatives of like compatibilities, key value pairs. Like it's a dictionary with a top level key. And then we'll say like this is our artifact structure that we're going to work on. And so what we'll have to do, I think, the question I don't know the answer to is if OCI wants to accept a new, just like the structure. Probably not. Probably we want to say that like this is the structure that we want to start working on as a community. And maybe that's something we can get feedback from the maintainers on. Where is the best organization to be working on this? Is this something we should keep it in OCI? Because, an OCI working group, that's an option. It could be that, Marcin, I thought last time you were going to look into like groups or places that you could, like organizations that would support that. Did you have a conversation with your manager people about that or whoever?
You mean about telco guys? If that's you're referring right now about getting out of OCI, if telco is okay with that and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, last week I wasn't, the most. I didn't have much free time, so I didn't talk to them yet. But I will. However, I don't know. Yeah, I just have to talk to them first to figure out these things.
Yeah, I do think we still need a place to work a structure that is, I guess I'm more indifferent about it. Like I'm like open source land. We have lots of, collections of people that I could suggest, but there's no like legal stuff driving my decision. So I think that we have to kind of defer to the folks that have that kind of structure that wouldn't be allowed to, for example, the HPC community has HPC containers, super containers, but that's probably not something that telco would like very much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no answer for that. Maybe they will like. I don't know, because if we are making some new artifacts which can potentially become part of OCI in the future, not I have no answer if place for them matters right now or not. So I have to get these answers, and I have to let you know about that. But speaking of the first part of this working group, image selection, the only proposal that makes sense to me right now is what Brandon's proposed with CPU features. That we just extend image spec with well-known CPU features based on the some Golang specification.
You don't like the annotations one?
Uh, I like the idea, but there is lack of standardization, at least to me. Like you can put anything on the container runtime side, and you can put anything on the image side. So if you are using external images, it might be hard too much.
I think it pushes some of the challenge off to those external vendors. And so it would push the actual implementation off to the NVIDIAs and whatnot out there to come up and agree on something. And maybe that's something where we can help out a little bit on the OCI side and try to work with some designs on that. But yeah, it does move the flexibility and complication outside of OCI in general.
But basically, for me, it would work if, as you say, if vendors are publishing their own labels they are going to use for images, then it would be easy. And at least we have some index, maybe under OCI or not, that put some references to these labels. Because otherwise, it for me, it doesn't make much sense.
I get the feeling that it would probably play out the same direction as some of the container image signing solutions and other attestation tools out there, where we were looking at the SBOM media types and thought we were going down a certain path, and then you realize that, well, one vendor decided to add attestations on top of that, and the attestation was really the artifact got uploaded, not the SBOM directly. It was included indirectly as a second factor in there. And so all the effort you kind of put behind saying, here's what the media type is going to be, it ends up getting picked by whoever the first implementation is that gets the most traction. And so someone is going to go through and implement the container image builder with the flags that will set up for different GPUs and whatnot out there. And everybody is just going to start huddling around those same media types just to be consistent with each other. And so all the tools interoperate. Not so much that we're forcing it down, but more that people see that someone else already done the work and why reinvent the wheel and create a second version of it unless they see a need.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. So uh, maybe this Thursday is not the best to present this to maintainers because first of all I have to make, let's call it telco council, realistic how this could work, and then once we have all stuff settled, maybe it will be the time to uh, talk to maintainers about the whole thing. Yeah, I would do it that way.
Yeah, I like that. And the reason I kind of like the annotations too is because like the HPC community we've already started kind of coming up with our own annotations that no one else would care about, but like we could formalize that and yeah, I like that idea.
I mean, you can formalize it and use it, and it could be entirely internal, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
You gotta have more chipper in there. Yay, we can do our own specs.
But Marcine, I know you put a lot of energy into these slides, and I just want to acknowledge that because sometimes it's frustrating when you do something and you have a plan and then the plan changes.
No, no worries. I work long enough in open source to know that a lot of things can be dropped or changed, so it's fine.
Yeah, as long as someone's not yelling at you, it's
Well, that's okay. I mean, we have perspective of managers, we have perspective of community. I have to be the guy who combine them together and somehow find a solution or something like that. But I understand, how open source work because, as I said, I worked with that long enough. So there's no hard feelings. Everything is okay, right? We are still trying to develop the good solution for that. So all good.
Before we move too far past the topic, do we want to dig into a little bit on I and J in terms of adding the extra descriptor within the platform? And are there people that want that are here? I'm not trying to bait
Well,
anybody into it, but just kind of like getting a feel for the room.
so from my opinion, as I mentioned already, this is a little bit. Let's put it that way. I prefer proposal J with new media
So
type because
the place I'm looking at is less of how you structure the artifact, whether it's a raw blob or whether it's a blob wrapped in a manifest, but more the way it was being inserted into the index as a descriptor on the platform.
yeah,
Because that I think is where we're going to run into some issues. And I kind of threw the rough comment up there, and I think Marcin, you were responding to some of the PR comments in there, but
yeah, I was basically running some experiments with that to see how this could work. I didn't put the compatibility inside of the platform, basically on the.
it it kind of
It's
doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. It kind of doesn't matter. So basically, RecCTL is making sure that we have appropriate media type and so on. And they also in Zod registry there are some services like Sync registry that is also trying to figure out what kind of media type is supported. So for now, basically this is ignored for garbage collection. You cannot even fetch this manifest if it's not in the index and so on. So out of the box, this is not gonna work. We would have to improve a lot of maybe not a lot of, but some clients like RecCTL and registries that they know what kind of that there is another reference in the descriptor that you possibly can remove. But I have one question because I created this tarball. Let me go to busybox test. This is how the index looks like, right? I hope it's visible enough.
Good
It's
enough.
just a
I don't know if
small,
it's just me. I can't like read the red. It.
It's
it's
not the best contrast.
Okay. I was like, am I colorblind or something?
But the thing
I
here,
just recognize it enough as a descriptor, and I see the annotation and stuff in there.
Oh yeah, I
Hey,
see
it's
it now.
clear.
Okay.
yeah. So you have only a few, I mean, one entry basically, right? Once you are
Mhm.
using a client to push this into registry, it becomes something like,
So that index there, if you
yeah,
pulled it up another time, you might see some.
it becomes large like that. I mean, you have references to
So
all digests, right? And I was
go back
wondering,
to your original index you were looking at, the first one, because you were looking in like an OCI layout directory, right?
yeah,
So pull up that first digest. So 17D, if you list your blobs. And so now instead of catting the index, cat blobs slash, you don't even need reg cuddle for this. You can just, it's right in this directory.
right, in this
Yeah, if
directory.
you just cat blobs
Okay, this is what you mean.
and then
I
that
understand now.
digest. Yeah, that should be what you were looking at earlier.
That was different. I will show you what I mean exactly. That was different. I was wondering what is exactly regenerating the index, because okay, let me go again to that. If you compare this one,
So
this is
this
the
index right here,
reference.
before you leave this index right here is like a tag listing inside of a repository, which is why you see the ref name latest.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
this is like you're querying a registry and saying list all the tags in the repository, and it just says, I've got a tag over here that points to this digest. This isn't your index manifest for your image and whatnot that you're pulling, the multi-platform image. This is the index of all the tags in the repository.
exactly. And in addition to Vim, sorry. In addition to that, you have later the index with all the digests as well, that you can pull over digest, not only over tag, right? And I was wondering what is exactly generating that index. Is it a client or
Oh.
registry?
So what was the second one you pulled up earlier that you were trying to look for?
I will show you right now.
Oh, part of Zot.
The
So
original one was
this
that, right? Just this entry.
this from Zot is going to be how it's doing its internal, but more than likely what's happening in there is each individual manifest gets pushed, is tracked,
Uh-huh.
and so all of those are showing up saying, hey, you can pull from this repository any of these manifests. And that's
I
just the way
see.
Zot keeps track of it internally.
So basically, registry is tracking, updating this
Yeah.
index based on calls, right? It's not
Yeah.
the client. Okay.
It's
Okay.
it's kind of its own tag listing. They've done similar stuff. I've done that one before like they did. And the reason that I pulled out the intermediate ones was more for internal garbage collection reasons.
Okay.
And they're keeping it probably for their own reasons. So it's you can reference it either way in an OCI layout.
Okay. Okay. I get that. I was just wondering what exactly is generating and updating that index with references to all the manifest. So it's registry
Yeah.
after all.
Yeah. It's each individual manifest push. It's going to go in reverse order. So the manifest is going to push first the individual platform specific manifest, and then it's going to push the index at the end. And so you'll, depending on how the registry handles that, you'll see individual stuff or you might see everything. But
Okay.
again, that's not your direct image. Think of it like a tag listing.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So yeah, speaking of proposals, I like more J.
Yeah, but regardless of whether it's a blob or an image in there, the fact that existing tooling out there doesn't know about this, and it's kind of the OCI advice we give. If there's stuff in the JSON you don't recognize, just ignore it. Let it go through, pass through, but you don't do anything with it if you don't recognize it. And there are a few registries that don't follow that advice. They'll intentionally reject it. And so if you try to push something like this, I think ECR, maybe GitLab, there are a few registries out there that are strict on what they accept. You'll just get rejected. The registry won't allow it to upload at all. But otherwise, for a majority of registries out there, they're going to accept this. But all the garbage collection, processing, and everything else around this, all the tools that know how to push and pull, they're not going to do it. And so you'll see potentially some silent data loss in there. And that's a concern that I have.
See,
Of the data loss scenarios out there, I would prefer an explicit rejection of no, you can't do this, than having silent data loss, because silent data loss is one of those things where someone gets through in the lab and says everything is good and runs through the unit test, everything's working, ships to production, everything's working, and then a week later, all of a sudden, nothing's working.
yeah, okay, that's a reasonable argument. Okay.
So that kind of applied to both I and J because we were doing the similar stuff of extending
Yeah.
the platform field. And so when we extend stuff in OCI, it's one of those things that people get very cautious about because of this kind of stuff of how does this affect the existing users, and can we make sure to structure it in such a way that we don't have some of these problems. And refers was very much like that. When we add the subject field was outside the normal garbage collection workflows. And that was a good thing for us because it meant that we were going to get that backward compatibility. Registries didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to Joe tomorrow in the morning, EU time. So I'm gonna pass him this. I already spoke with him about both two ideas. I also raised some concerns on that, but I will update him tomorrow about these problems. So yeah, too bad. I mean, this compatibility script I really like, but that's okay.
I would kind of like Vanessa has been saying earlier. Let's spend less time trying to figure out how to associate the artifact and more time focusing on what problems we're going to solve with it first and coming up with example implementations. And then once we see that we've got an implementation that solves a problem that we need the artifact for, and the artifact needs to look like a certain thing to solve that problem, then start coming back to, okay, are there different ways we can implement this? And let's pick the best one. But I think we've jumped too fast into how to structure this before we know what we're solving.
Yeah. Okay. So any more topics? Because I had just this proposal I and J, and the next steps how we should do it. So I would say the next meetings, let's maybe focus on the first part of this, because we for the container runtime image selection, your proposals, Brandon, if that makes sense to you guys, that we try to nail this, how to extend and improve this image selection the best way.
Yeah, and then maybe after that we can still do a presentation, and part of that presentation will be like we will propose. I guess one question I have is, do we want to make the proposal that part of our plan is to talk to different groups like NVIDIA that are producing a lot of these images, or is that something we need to do a priori to the presentation? I would think the second. I would think we'd say like, okay, here's the structure we want to add. Here's our plan for talking to these particular groups. What do you think?
At least from my experience, they will not take care about the structure. I mean, they will, at least my experience of talking about this to people at KubeCon, about this first part of image selection. They really didn't care how we structure this image spec, as long as it solves their use cases, that there is more granular image selection. That's all. If it's a new platform features field or its platform compatibilities, it doesn't matter as long as they can put their labels in there, which is a little bit more standardized. That was my concern about this platform, this attestation idea with annotations that you have no standardization in there, because people expect that we will bring some kind of standardization of labels as well, that there is no big chaos again. Okay, people will have more fields to use, but nobody would know what exactly to put in there. That was my problem.
I feel like the big next step is going to be trying to implement one or more of these within something like a container D and just proving it out, showing that it can work. And I don't know how much that's us talking to container D maintainers, getting them to do the work for us, and how much that might probably be better off being someone on our group to try to come up with a POC to show that it can work.
Yeah, I was about, I started this prototype in container D with this platform compatibility and platform features. I wasn't able to finish that yet because of lack of time, but I will finish that. And your idea, Vanessa, I think it doesn't harm just to talk to NVIDIA and others as well if there is a requirement for this, that they can share their opinions or so. But personally, I would focus to finishing this prototype and showing it's useful to containerd folks. That's how I see that. Okay, anything else?
Nothing for me.
Not for me.
Okay, so let me talk to telco guys, and I will keep you updated about prototyping this outside of OCI or anywhere that we can move forward with the second part of this. So yeah, I will just keep you updated, and we will see how to deal with this.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Marcin. Thanks,
Sure,
everyone.
thank you too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.